Good evening. How's everyone doing this evening? It's my absolute privilege and pleasure to be with you. How many of you here want to live the good life? The good life. Well then, so the good life is a lot like beauty. You know what constitutes a good life? What's in the eye of the beholder. So the good life, would you agree that part of the good life is how you feel about yourself? Would you also agree that it's love that makes the world go round? And would you also agree that it's money that pays for the trip? How many of you are entrepreneurs, self-employed? Or at least you're in the process of becoming? How many of you have a job right now and you're in the process of becoming a full-time entrepreneur? How many of you are already an entrepreneur in the process of becoming a multipreneur? Where you want to have multiple streams of income so you can have the most valuable commodity we possess, time. 86,400 seconds, 86,400 seconds, 1,440 minutes, 1 hour, 1 day, your most valuable commodity. I'm going to cover some insight for you tonight on how to become prosperous. Now, prosperity is a term that comes from, it's a Latin term meaning prospero or in the flow. But if you live in any kind of resistance and you end up telling yourself that you have to make yourself do something, or you end up avoiding what you perceive to be painful, that would be procrastination. Now, there's a high probability that most of you it's a tendency, to procrastinate in isolated areas. Is that a fair assessment? So procrastination is an effect, it's not a cause. I also am very skilled at assisting people to understand their addictions. I'm a recovering addict with 26 years of sobriety, no relapses, 14 years as an addict. Addictions are based on events. Events shape feelings, feelings become a mood, and then a mood becomes an identity. And what most people do is they do the same thing over and over, and then their language style is not conducive to changing in the transformation. They keep the same type of language because words precede action. Men and women constantly make laws with their words. Most of society uses words that are non-committal, words that keep them doing the same thing over and over. Now, many people, when it comes to being prosperous, have a deep level of anxiety about the responsibility of success. You also have to factor how you've been conditioned to behave. Now, if you've gone through the educational system, you've graduated from junior high and or high school, you've gone on to getting any other kind of degree, college degree, or you've got a master's degree or a PhD, you've been conditioned to live in your left brain. Now, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, it requires a much more intuitive, inspired type of set of feelings. But if you live in your left brain, that's going to be your logical, egoic, analytical mind, and that's what's going to keep you doing the same thing over and over. Or if you tend to be perfect and every situation has to be lined up, dialed in before you can make your move, before you're ready, there's a high probability you will procrastinate. You also have to factor that you haven't been conditioned a whole lot about money, except how to trade time for it. If you have had a job, you will get paid what the job is worth. But if you want to step into free enterprise, which means what the free market bears, where there are no limits, where you can create whatever it is you desire on your terms and your time frame to live the good life. And I like to teach people skills in 3 different business models. My favorite business models are real estate. I come from a long line of real estate investors. My parents just cashed in on their inherited land in southeast Iowa at about $4,000 an acre. I grew up on 3,000 acres of tall corn country and soybeans in southwest Iowa, right outside of Omaha, Nebraska, some of the richest, deepest, blackest soil in America. My parents presently have another 600 acres in southeast Iowa. I grew up with parents who fixed and flipped houses. Real estate has always been a way of life for me. I've bought several properties myself. I like to buy and hold. I like long-term real estate. I like assets. And do you ever see the show on Saturday night called Flipping Las Vegas? One of my clients was on that Saturday night, Mark McKee. He's a very interesting man. He has 40 homes in Las Vegas that he owns outright. He has a passive income of well over multiple 5 figures a month. That's a good life, isn't it? He flips another 3 to 4 houses a month. Does 7 figures a year. Well, he's been doing it for a long time. So anything worth mastering, if you're going to master a skill, I like real estate, I like internet marketing, and I like direct sales network marketing. All 3 of these type of business models have the key component when it comes to creating wealth: leverage. So you can get paid on multiple levels of pay through leverage. You trade time for dollars, you're only going to get paid what the time is worth. And if you want to really live the good life and take your game to the next level, that requires a different kind of skills, habits, and then, of course, mindset. Now, how many of you are relatively new in owning a business? Relatively new. So you live in Southern California, right, where the cost of living is one of the highest places to live in America. Is that correct? So what do you factor it's going to require of you to live a good life? How much income on a monthly basis do you require to achieve? Notice I didn't say what you need, because what you need, see, need is a word that's a future tense with no commitment. Your unconscious does not separate fact and fiction, does exactly what you tell it to do. And this is why most people procrastinate, because their language style is based on past events that keep them doing the same thing over and over. Now, the number one situation that will hinder you if you're relatively new or unskilled is anxiety. Fear is an overused word. Fear has very little to do with why you do what you do. It's anxiety, and that is emotional. That is anger, hate, guilt, resentment, abandonment, rejection, overwhelmed feelings. Those are the typical emotions that will affect you when it comes to changing. If you keep doing the same thing over and over, what will you continue to receive? What will that be? Actually, that same result, though, will be disappointment. And that's what procrastination is. Procrastination allows you to avoid or perceive pain and stay disappointed. Now, if you were tired of that kind of energy, and you were tired of being overwhelmed, and you were ready to change some habits, here's where it all starts. Now, how many of you want to become prosperous in the next 2 to 5 years? Now, notice I didn't ask anyone to raise their hand. Now, why did you raise your hand? Because you've been conditioned to behave in a manner. I ask a question, only a few people answer. Now, that's very predictable. Human beings are predictable. The more you understand their predictability, the more power you will possess, because it's your responsibility to understand and or read people. So would you say $250,000 in a calendar year would be a good start if you're not achieving that already? Would that allow you to live a relatively good life? Now, you had some really skilled people in here who are some of the people who are sponsored the event. I saw you had some financial planners in here, right? And understanding what to do with money. Most people in America have anxiety about money, yet money has no anxiety about you. Money is a very neutral, inanimate, not even an object anymore, because there's very little of it. Most of money in today's world is not real money. In 1933, all money started to change. Actually, it was 32. Because the bills that were in paper no longer said payable to bearer on demand in gold coin. So if you're going to be prosperous, it's very important you understand this. Numismatic law, laws that govern money. If you become skilled at this, you will become a numisticist. That means that you understand not how to make money. Money does not get made. Money gets attracted. Money gets created. And you have to be able to find the opportunities and or the people that you can collaborate with, so you can create win-win situations. The more you understand that, the less anxiety you will have about the opportunity to be wealthy. Now, being wealthy in America, here's how it breaks down. It's staggering. Only 1/20th of 1%. Only 1/20th of 1% have a net worth of $1 million. And I want to thank Daryl and Imran for having me here. They're both students of mine. I met Imran 7 years ago in Irvine, California. There was an event of about 200 people, and I was a keynote speaker at that event. I spoke for about an hour. At the end of my presentation, Imran walked up to me at the back of my table there at the decision table, and he said, "Mr. Combs, I'd really like to hire you, but..." See, the truth always follows but. So he says, "I'd like to hire you, but I'd have to run that by my wife." Now, I'm a closer. I've been closing sales since I was a teenager. And there's two kinds of people when it comes to money. There's closers and there's posers. If you want to be a closer, you have to understand what is meant, never what is said. If you understand what is meant and you can hear what's really going on, then all you have to learn to do to close a transaction, see, it's not just a sale, it's a transaction. Because a transaction is when money moves. So here's what I said to Imran. I said, "Imran, hand me your phone." Now, I'm also very skilled at teaching this, the art of asking. And asking is 5 to 15 words that end with a question. Most of society is not skilled at asking. They are unskilled at talking. Most people talk, and then when they ask one question, they ask 5. The average person that asks a question keeps talking and will ask 4 or 5 questions in a sequence, typically about 2 minutes. Now, the average attention span of the average person is 28 to 31 seconds. That's why all commercials are 30 seconds in length. So I said, Imran, hand me your phone. Now, Imran would do what anyone whose left brain would do. He donated it. Here's how it looked like. So he said, well, what are you going to do with my phone? I said, I'm going to call your wife. What's your wife's name? So once he told me her name was Tama, T-A-M-A. I asked him for his phone number, which is another 5 to 15 words that end with a question mark. So when she answered the phone, I used the same system I've been using for years. Tama, my name is Jeffery Combs. I'm here in Irvine, California with your husband, Imran. And Imran has given me permission to ask you if it would be possible for him to hire me to be his coach. And she said, well, that's ridiculous. I want to hire you. 7 years ago, wasn't it? It's pretty interesting how that all plays out.
Best decision she ever made.
That was the best decision she ever made, right. That was a good call. How many of you have anxiety about money? Now take a look, be as candid as you can. How many of you actually have some anxiety about money? All right, so factor this. Here's what happens with this, and we'll cover some of this tonight. And you start with this, my dialogue with money. Just say it, my dialogue with money. All transformation begins with words followed by action. So the affirmation that you use to affirm, my dialogue with money is improving. My dialogue with money is healthy. I'm very skilled at asking for what I deserve to receive. A key word in any kind of transaction is deserve. D-E-S-E-R-V-E. Also comes from a Latin term, means day of service. Deserve. Now here's why you're going to have some challenges with money, most of you, because you have spent 20,000 meals by the time you were 18 years old with the wrong financial planners. This is a fact. Most of your dialogue with money, well, it doesn't just have to be parents. It's if you have a lot of what you learn about money and prosperity and reciprocity and giving and receiving comes from what goes on at the dinner table. Now, if you grew up in a passive, aggressive household, or if you grew up in a dysfunctional household, or you grew up with a set of parents who perhaps abandoned you or left the family, or you grew up in any kind of addicted household, it's going to have an effect on your neurological network. Your neurological network is a series of neurons that wire and fire in your brain that forms a mood, that becomes a feeling, that becomes an identity. So if your identity with money is not conducive to being able to feel comfortable receiving it, then you actually put yourself in a place to resist. Not only resist, but you'll tend to sabotage the opportunity to create the transactions unless you're doing something that's familiar. Now, if you've been conditioned to have a job, it's not that difficult to trade the time for dollars and have someone else tell you what to do because that seems normal. It seems normal to get into a car and go through rush hour traffic in Los Angeles. 10 miles is what, 2 hours? Something like that? I speak a lot on the East Coast. My biggest database is in Hoboken, New Jersey, and in Connecticut. I speak there about 20 times a year. Now, those people commute 2 hours on subways back and forth from Connecticut to Manhattan. A large percent of the people that work on Wall Street live in Connecticut. That's about a 4-hour commute. I mean, factor how much time that is. If you are serious this year, is 2014 your year? Is 2014 your year? How many of you have suffered enough? How many of you have struggled enough? How many of you have? How many of you have lived in a poverty consciousness, not a prosperity consciousness? We live in the richest country in America. You live in one of the richest counties in America, one of the richest cities in America. It's time for you to become skilled in the art of attracting prosperity and wealth, isn't it? So there's a certain set of skills required to do that. Sales is the highest paid profession in the world. Yet for many people, here's what comes out of their mouth. Do I have to sell anything? Is this sales? So their body language autonomically goes like this. That means fight or flight. So what happens in that situation, it means serotonin level drops, cortisol level raises, right-handed person raises their left shoulder like this, The thought of selling, which represents rejection, is enough to put that body into procrastination. How many did I just define in the room? All right, so here's what you learn to do. You have to let go of your anxiety about the outcome. You also have to factor risk for reward. You have to learn how to do this. Ask a series of questions about the outcome you seek, specifically in a sequence. I've taught every real estate investor I've ever coached not to use this word, deal. How does deal sound versus this term, transaction? What's the difference between a deal and a transaction? Yeah, you require a transaction. And people will say, I'm doing a deal today. I'm doing a deal today. Well, typically, your unconscious doesn't recognize that because there's not going to be a transaction. It's typically you're going to set yourself up to be disappointed before you even start. What's your name? Ron. So if I could give you any insight tonight on any situation that allowed you to break free right now, what would it be? Okay, go ahead. So ask me a question.
How would I go about being more deserving, or at least thinking about deserving?
Okay, that's two questions. Which one do you want me to answer first?
The real question is how do you...
Now, hold on. You understand what you didn't do anything wrong. This is what most people do who are unskilled in asking a question. First of all, they check out. Most people, when you ask them a question, the first sound out of their mouth is followed by a preposition. Well, so that means they react rather than respond. So it all starts with your words. It starts with the term deserve, to, receive. Then you want to be able to find a money niche. A niche that you feel comfortable, have an aptitude, or feel that you would be skilled, qualified, or good at. What are you good at right now as you start to reinvent yourself?
Building rapport.
Is that building rapport or building rapport? Building rapport. So building rapport is the ability to connect. Now, you can be a great connector, but that doesn't qualify you to get compensated. Although it is a component to the situation. Because if you can connect, that means you should be able to become skilled at asking. So that skill breaks down to 5 to 15 words that ends with a question mark. Now, connecting is fact-finding, rapport building, and small talk. When you learn how to put that together in a package, you become a very skilled interviewer. And you will find if you're a skilled interviewer, that people will openly and willingly tell you a lot about themselves. But you also must become not only a great connector, you must become a very skilled listener. Sweetest sound to a person's name is the sound of their own, sweetest sound to a person's ear is the sound of their own name. But if you're one of these people that say, well, I'm not good with names, I don't have a good memory, what have you done before you started? Set yourself up to be disappointed. Set myself up to be disappointed. Are you a real estate investor? Broker? It's good times to be a real estate broker, isn't it? Especially a real estate broker, you can create leverage, right? Is the market good in San Diego? Yeah, exactly. There's never a bad time to be in real estate, is there? I mean, it's always a good time to be in any kind of business, isn't there? Are you skilled with social media yet? Getting there? That's a good... That's right. So that means outsourcing, right? I'm very skilled in social media. I have about 20,000 people follow me. I write 10, 15 posts a day. I use an application called Post Planner. Any of you use that? It's an application. You can find it in the blue bar and the white bar. Post Planner. How many know what EdgeRank means? None of you know what EdgeRank means? EdgeRank means who's watching you, and then Facebook has a way that they calculate your edge rank. So the higher your edge rank, the longer your post will stay up on the news feed. So that means you get more views. So that's also a way to connect. Social media is a great way to connect, isn't it? But connecting is the ability to ask a question specifically about an outcome you seek. So when you become skilled at that, 5 to 15 words that end with a question, you also become skilled at writing sales copy. Because we all require this, don't we? Qualified leads. Is that right? Is that right? We all require qualified leads. You're a coach, right? See, is that yes? Okay, so you're a coach. You require leads, don't you? And my name's Jeff. I'm not in the military. My ear doesn't resonate with it, sir.
Just showing you respect.
Well, that's what they say in the South, but since this ain't the South, that's what they try and say in the South. You know, typically, when people say sir, a lot of times it's because they forget the name. That's pretty good. No, see, that's good. So as a coach, you're always seeking qualified leads, aren't you? Not only qualified leads, but we as coaches, or anyone we want that have a network, we want people to open the door for us, right? We want people to give us referrals. Now, we will get that when we give the two components that allow people to do business with us over and over, which allows us to get compensated, is value and service, right? Not only that, we want people to call us up and say, hey, I'm ready to buy from you. Isn't that what we want? Is that what you want? Is that or is that yes? So your brain will not recognize because is a sound, it is not a word. One of the most important words that you start to incorporate and integrate into your communication style is yes. Also, in any kind of transaction where money is going to move, there's a series of questions you will ask that are yes. Now, that's not a connecting question. That's a decision question when you ask that. When you learn how to ask a decision question along with connecting questions throughout a conversation, that is called rapport. That's when you are building rapport. There's three ways you ask a question. You ask a question through fact-finding. What do you do for a living? How long have you been doing that? How serious are you about becoming a real estate investor in 2014? Are you qualified to buy this house? These are fact-finding questions. Where are you from originally? Where'd you go to college? That's more of a rapport-type building question. Small talk, how's the weather? Now, we in California do not talk about the weather the way the rest of the world does. Do you know this? I travel the United States. I used to travel the world. I flew 155,000 air miles. People talk about the weather except in these states: Arizona, California, Florida, and Nevada. Anywhere outside of that, people freak out when it snows. Have you noticed this? Even on Facebook, you see how people, they commiserate about the weather. It's a common bond for a lot of people, for negative people to be negative. Have you ever noticed that? Where people gravitate to situations like that? Now, what's your name? Is it Beth? Beth, where are you from originally? Chicago. You see Carolyn right there? Carolyn's my friend. She's from Homewood, Illinois. You know where that is? Is that yip or yes? Okay, good. Now, how many of you after tonight are going to clean up your language style? Words, just say this. Words precede action. My word is my law. I'm creating new laws with my words. This is to affirm. So if you are going to change any behavior, it's going to begin with your words, because your words will then dictate your actions, or your words will dictate your inactions. What do you do for a career, Beth? Good for you. So you know my friend here? Can you meet each other? Is that yes? Good. Now, sure is it yes, sure is sure. Sure does not mean yes, sure means sure. Sure is not really sure, because a lot of people say sure when they mean no. Okay, good. Sure typically is a blow-off. Sure. Now, in network marketing, here's what happens to a lot of network marketers. They're very unskilled. They invite people. They don't schedule people, they invite them. And then they get all excited. Oh, I have 7 people coming tonight. And then they get a stiff neck looking at the door waiting for the people who aren't going to show up. Because they didn't schedule the appointment. They invited a few people, said, sure, yep, okay. I'll be there. See, most people are not skilled at this. Listening, Listening. Any of you ever heard of a memory expert named Ron White? Ron White, on 3 different occasions, has been the world champion of memory. Ron is a very good friend of mine. He memorized the entire Vietnam Wall and can recite it forwards and backwards. Ron could spend about 20 minutes, right, Darren? you've seen, Ron could spend about 20 minutes in this room collecting everyone's name in about 20 minutes. Then he could have everyone stand up. And he could do this when you're milling around. He'd have everyone stand up and he'd have you sit down one by one. He also could have anyone in this room give him 2 digits. He could do that where 20 people gives him 2 digits. 2 hours later, he'll recite it forward and backwards. Now, he is very skilled at that specifically because he is very attentive. You know what that means? He has an acute skill to be able to hear. And he has a memory, but most importantly, his memory, he has a system to maintain a great memory. Now, if you do not have a system in business, then here's what you will do. You will wing it. How many of you do this? You will wing it. Is it funny? Then why are you laughing? The reason people laugh when I ask them questions is because they check out neurologically. Do you know this? People laugh without even, nothing's funny. The reason they're laughing is because it represents a way to avoid the pain. So they'll check out, and when you want to catch yourself doing that, if you tend to laugh, that's going to be a direct reflection of a passive-aggressive parent that you grew up with, or a passive-aggressive person in your personality that you grew up with, typically somewhere between about 3 and 11. So that becomes an identity. 55% of the population laughs when nothing's funny, because these are the people pleasers of society. So when it comes to personalities, about 55% of the population are codependent, people pleasers, givers, and servers. Now, many people are very skilled at this, and it's great to be a great server. However, if serving is your identity and giving is your identity, it inhibits you the ability to ask for what you deserve. This personality has challenges selling. If you are left-brained, which is about 20 to 25% of society, you're also going to have challenges selling or being able to be an opportunist because you're an analyzer. And that person typically has challenges selling because everything has to be perfect. And since nothing is perfect, this person tends to procrastinate. Now, did I find anyone in the room with these 2 personalities? Yes. Is that uh-huh? Yes. Now, you're recovering from this, right, Imran? Yes. If you're an engineer, that would be you. High probability. How are we doing here tonight? What would you like me to cover for you tonight? Just an open-ended question. What would you like me to cover? Anyone? My first name is Jeff, so ask it in 5 to 15 words without telling me a story.
How to make more money.
My name's Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. How to make more money.
Okay, were you listening earlier?
Yes.
But I said we don't make money. Remember that? Okay, now put your hands down. Put your hands down. Okay, put them in a receive mode. Turn them over. Take a deep breath, uncross your legs. Uncross your legs. It's tough to make money when you're like this. This means you're closed off in your communication style. Take a deep breath. So do your best to not use the word make money. Find a money niche. Become very skilled in it. Learn the habits, skills, and the mindset, and then specifically this, the Zen, Z-E-N. In any type of profession, there is an inner game. And the person who really starts to master the inner game of a profession becomes a professional. What's your first name? Art. Where are you from originally?
California.
That's a big state. Good. Now, how many questions did it require of me to get the city? Well, I just ask a general question. So, Los Angeles. Art, last year, I coached 2,640 hours. That's 12 hours a day, 3 days a week, and another 10 on a 4th day. And then I flew 155,000 air miles on United and some other airlines, a little more than that, but 155,000 on United, and I spoke 61 times last year. Now, would you assess that I'm probably a professional by now doing that?
I would say you're an expert.
That's correct. Now, the reason I'm an expert is because I started as a teenager selling. Do you have a favorite baseball team other than the Dodgers? You a Dodger fan?
No.
Do you have a favorite baseball team?
Padres.
Padres. Well, the reason I bring up baseball is because of all the 4 major sports, Major League Baseball has the best union. So they have the best union in all sports, so they also attract with the free market bears. They have the best contracts. So the average Major League Baseball player that is a professional, so whoever the second baseman this year on the Padres is, there's a high probability he's going to make between $4 and $8 million because he is a professional in a profession where he gets compensated very well for what the free market bears. Now, the reason they get compensated specifically is because they can hit what can't be seen. A baseball player who is very skilled is able to hit something they can't see coming from 60 feet 6 inches, somewhere between 90 to 102 miles an hour. That's the average pitch. So if you can bat 300, you're going to make about $4 million in that profession, right? Now that takes a lot of skill, doesn't it? Hand-eye coordination. Well, fortunately for you and me, we don't have to be that skilled to make that kind of money, right? So do you have aspiration to be a millionaire? Yes, I do. Anyone? Any of you have aspiration to be a millionaire? Yes. 2 reasons for the person you become and then the leverage that it gives you, right? Theoretically, we should be able to do more with our life. Now, the financial planners in the room, you know that if you achieve 7 figures in a calendar year, that you're going to be in a tax bracket. What's that tax bracket? Too much, that's correct. You know, when you own a business, you get bills from the IRS, the Franchise Tax Board. You don't even know what the fuck they're about, right? I got one yesterday for $3,300. I had to ask my accountant, what is this one for, right? I mean, Uncle Sam is in our pocket, right? That's a way of life. So what does that mean? You have to outproduce your problems. So you want to know how to become a millionaire, right? Well, it starts with this. Your feelings. Your feelings, your thoughts, your actions, your inspiration, and your desire. Would you say that all those have to start to come together? So what is it that you're doing right now to become a millionaire in the next 2 to 5 years?
Here to learn.
Okay, but do you have a profession?
Well, currently I'm an engineer.
Oh, one of these guys. Actually, you're not. You got misdiagnosed. Fortunately for you, I can tell this. That's what you do for a vocation, but that's not your personality. You're a very warm, friendly gentleman. I can tell that. You don't have a pen in your pocket. 99% of people like you have a pen in their pocket. Did you leave yours home?
That was old school.
That's old school, right? So let me tell you about one of my clients. I started coaching this woman June 28th, 2011. I was speaking in Syracuse, New York. I'm going to show you what can happen if you are serious about this transformation. And you have the right mentors, you're in the right place at the right time, but most importantly, you learn how to capitalize, seize the day. And you start to master the skills required in your profession. I'm going to share a story with you of one of my best clients that I've ever coached in my almost 18-year career. Her name is Alexis Romano. She is from Hoboken, New Jersey. I just did an event for her this weekend with 250 people. June 28th, 2011, which will be 3 years from now, in June, she drove from Hoboken, New Jersey to Syracuse, New York to see me speak. It's about 5.5 hours. At the intermission of my break, she walked back and hired me to be her coach. There was nothing remarkable about her. She had big gold earrings, long green dress. She's about 5'4", maybe 110 pounds, very quiet and timid. Nothing stood out about her. When I interviewed her in the very first coaching session that I coached her, I found out that she owned 2 properties outright. She had $65,000 in the bank, and she had a net worth of $750,000. Would you say that's pretty good? Pretty good. And she did that as a high school guidance counselor. As high school. Now, I interview my clients. I do a lot of fact-finding. I do a lot of rapport building with them. I find out a lot about their past. I find out about their parents. I found out about the household they grow up in, because that's what creates their neurological network. That gives me insight to understand this, cause and effect, or why they do what they do. The reason I do this is so I can find out what their problems are. Because once I start finding their problems, now I can assist them with this key word, a solution. And here's what happened to her in 3 years of my coaching, and not just because of my coaching, but because of the woman she became also. The first year that I coached her, she made $24,000 part-time. And I kept suggesting to her that she quit her job. She hated her job as a high school guidance counselor. She had a master's degree. She went to a commuter college, did not go to a state school, did not go to any impressive school, didn't go to Rutgers University. She went to just a typical commuter college. But she had reached the top of her profession, and she hated her boss. Any of you in that situation now where you have some employer that you have friction with, or you don't like the situation you do, or whatever it is? Second year I coached her, she made $64,000, and she quit her job. Now, it took a lot of coaxing by me to even understand the value of quitting her job before she was ready. She had a lot of reasons not to quit. She kept saying she was going to go bankrupt, and I said, well, that would be challenging since you have a net worth of about $1 million. That was her excuse. She might go bankrupt. She might not be able to pay her bills. She had a lot of anxiety about letting go of control of the outcome. Now, she quit her job in July of 2012, and what happened to her last year was nothing short of miraculous. Here's what happened to her last year. $900,000. $900,000. Now today, I was just at Hoboken last Friday. Not only does she have more real estate, she just bought her first gym. So I was in her build-out, and I was looking up in the rafters where she had spray painted it all gray. She had a room that she was going to have 15 spin bikes in it. And I was just sitting there looking and calculating the kind of income she was going to have. And so what really sets her apart is she has vision. But if you don't have vision about the outcome, if you cannot see the outcome, you'll procrastinate. And if you do not have a routine or a simple discipline that you do daily by doing this with dedicated blocks of time. You may have all this going on out here, but this is a must. This is non-negotiable. A dedicated block of time. But if you let life continue to get in the way, if you have kids, a dog, an animal, you have obligations, civic duties, charitable acts of kindness you do, and you put the transition or your business last, it will stay last. Because there comes a point that whatever you're going to transition, it has to be some level of priority. It means that it's non-negotiable. And you can't do this in 15 minutes a day winging it, or whenever you get around to it. You're going to have to let go of the anxiety about the outcome and be able to develop the skills, habits, and mindset. And so to do this, you're going to have to tap into a source that you may not have tapped into before. It's called your resolve, R-E-S-O-L-V-E. That's your DNA. That's the goods. That's the juice. You're going to have to tap into that. That's your passion. You're going to have to find it. Because if you don't, you'll continue to tiptoe quietly through life, and you will arrive right here, grave safely. And it'll say in your epitaph, I'll take your question in just a minute, died greatest pain of regret. That's what will happen. That's what happens to most Americans. I told you only 1/20th of 1% of America has a net worth of $1 million. Only 1/20th of 1%. What does that tell you? There's a lot of room at the top, isn't there? When it comes to money, only 7% of America achieves 6 figures in a calendar year. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Does anyone know what the average net worth of the average income of the average household is with 2 earners? It's pretty low. In California, it's a little higher. It's not much more than $55,000 for 2. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Only 2% of America achieves $250,000 in a calendar year. What does that tell you? The average millionaire is 52 years old, achieves $769,000 in a calendar year. 80% of the people that are millionaires do it by owning a small business with less than 5 employees. So what does that mean about you? It means this: right place, right time, right? You know, success has no barriers. Success doesn't care what color you are. Success is about who you become. Success is who you are. Do you have a question for me? Is it yip or yes? Well, if you're ready to ask it, because you had your hand up, just like in school. Your name? Hi, Sonia. Where are you from? Is it a question or a story? Then ask. Just try to start with one. Hold on. There's two. Okay. No one needs coaching. First of all, I'll clarify this to you. Coaching is an option. You personally don't need anything. You have to decide whether you deserve it. See, you never want to come from need. Need's a very disempowering term. It's a term that has no commitment. No one should hire a coach unless they really feel they require it. Cool? That's first. And your second question. How does that happen? How do you ask the same? Is that upside down? Well, I'm not here. I don't have to satisfy everyone. That's how it goes.
Basically, let's say I want to get the coaching, but I don't know what category within my abilities do I need coaching in. So, could it be possible that I don't?
Could be possible you process a lot. Actually, you didn't. You just forgot. See, it's not you didn't remember, you just forgot. So if you let go of what you forgot and you remembered what you know, what would you have asked me?
That's a very good question. Because it was really important.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll be right back there at the decision table after the event, and you can ask me as many questions as you want in a very relaxed atmosphere. Is that cool? No, here's what we're going to do. You can go to the bathroom anytime you want because this ain't school. So if you got a winky tinky, be my woman. Just whenever it's cool with me, just get it. See, this hinders us a lot. I don't want to be rude, which is based on this key term, G-U-I-L-T, guilt. How many of you let guilt control your emotional state? Raise your hand on this one. All right, so here's the question I ask people, if that's your identity. Who in your family used guilt to control you? Well, is it funny? Is it funny? Actually, it's not funny, isn't it? It's tragic. Because if you continue to let guilt... See, here's why it's important you master this, Sonia, or whoever... Here, I'll break this down for you. I'll show you how we as energetic beings get affected by our emotional state. You've heard the term vibration, haven't you? How many of you know John Assaraf? Lives in Rancho Santa Fe, right down the highway. I'm doing an event with him in New Jersey on May 9th and 10th in the Meadowlands, right by the Giant Stadium, and he's going to be one of the keynote speakers at one of my events. I've known John since 2000, done many, many events with him. Matter of fact, he used to speak for free for me. Not anymore, not since The Secret. John gets about 20,000 a keynote. That's what happens with right place, right time. Rhonda Byrne pulled him out of the hat. John was a very successful entrepreneur, but John specializes in neuroscience. How many of you have ever seen a speaker named Dr. Joe Dispenza? You can catch him at the Unity Church every now and then. He's good, isn't he? Love him. He was in a movie called What the Bleep. He wrote a book called Evolve the Brain that's a must. Assaraf wrote a book called The Answer, which is another book that you should have. But you've heard the term law of attraction, right? How many of you have heard that term? But how many of you don't really know the science of that, what it really means, the law of attraction? I mean, you have the basics of it, but there's a science to it. And once you understand the science of the law of attraction, here's how it operates. And this is how guilt, and this is how any emotion starts to show up in who and what you attract. Now, how many of you want to change what you attract? Right, so you want to change what you attract? Why? Soulmate, right? Soulmate? So you're tired of bad men? The ones who abandon us, neglect us, right? Right, exactly. But We've had a few of these relationships. How many of you wake up one day and you realize you attracted the very person that you were in conflict with as a kid? Well, there's a reason that happens. Or you attracted that passive-aggressive person that you grew up with, and all of a sudden now you're married to him. What does that mean? You're screwed. Especially if you're the one that's prosperous. So energetically, and there's 3 ways we connect with people. 7% of how we connect with people is words. 38% is the tone of the words. That means how we say it, how we enunciate it. And then 55% is the energy. Now, we're emotional beings. Would you agree? Yes. But if you are in an emotional state where you're overwhelmed, now how many of you tend to get overwhelmed? How many of you have this place in your house called the garage? Here's the garage door right here. It's attached to your house, and your car sits out here because you can't get your car in it. How many have a garage you can't park your car in it? Or how many of you ever walked your dog in a neighborhood, and you walk by and you go, wow. Because all the chaos going in there, right?
I can't believe they leave their garage door open.
What, right, it's to telegraph. They end up telegraphing how overwhelmed they are, don't they? How many of you had a mommy who couldn't throw anything away? I did. Right. She has her red books from '77 because there's a recipe in it for goulash she might require, right? There's a hairstyle she might want to have, a beehive, something like that, right? So as emotional beings, we are affected by anger, hate, resentment, guilt, shame, abandonment, rejection, and overwhelmed feelings. These are the emotions that do affect us. Now, in the law of attraction, the lowest level of transmutation of any energy is guilt and shame. When energy is measured and calibrated, guilt and shame breaks down to about 25 to 50 cycles per second. It's the lowest level that we transmute our feelings. So if you actually live in guilt, you will attract people to fulfill these feelings. That's what it means. If you spend a lot of time in any one of these energies, you will attract people to fulfill these feelings. I'll take your questions in a minute. So that's the lowest level of transmutation. Any one of these anxieties, it's going to be about 100 to 25 decibels and or cycles per second. Now, if you want to read a book that will give you great insight on this scientifically, there's a book called Power versus Force by the great David Hawkins. He wrote another great book called Letting Go. He wrote another book called I, just one letter I. He's one of my favorite authors. And he wrote another book called I of I. But the book you require to skim is Power versus Force. It will break down energetically how and why we do what we do. Now, once you understand why you do what you do, then you can do this. I can change. But if in your self-talk, your self-awareness, and your communication style, you consistently say, I don't know, then what will you continue to do? That which is familiar. That's what you'll continue to do. The word familiar is Latin for family, that of family. That's what it means. So energetically, if you're in any kind of these emotions, specifically you're overwhelmed because you are a giver-server, you take on too many obligations. How many of you do that? You take on too many obligations. How many take on too many obligations and then you don't have a schedule or routine and you find yourself constantly behind? Now, you want to know why you do this? Want to know why? Generally speaking, somewhere in your childhood, you end up becoming a parent. Or you end up becoming a caretaker, you start taking care of someone. It becomes your identity. And then it becomes an obligation unconsciously, and you end up taking care and doing way too many things for other people, and you don't have boundaries for self. You will tend to be last, not first or in the middle. Make sense? So that's a feeling, that's a mood, that's an identity. So if you're transmuting your feelings at 100 cycles a second, that's the lowest transmutation that you can actually send signals to. The second lowest level that we send signals to is fear. In fear, we're transmuting at about 200 cycles a second. Third level is doubt. This is where most of society is. Doubt is the space between fear and faith. This is why so many people procrastinate, because they don't fail and they don't succeed. succeed. You can actually go up and down in doubt. The average person in America, and this is very frightening, transmutes their feelings at 207 cycles a second. And where can you find that average person in America on any given day? The pharmacy. Red pill, blue pill. What are the two most common pills that the average American now consumes? Ambien and Adderall. That's the average pill that the AMA uses to dumb down society. And it's because of this right here. And then you factor what goes on with autism. What's the link to autism? Anyone know? What's one of the major links to autism? Vaccinations. Yeah, the vaccine. There's a vaccine, and so that it cuts off a flow of blood that creates that. It's very common. I coach a woman who has 3 kids that have autism. 3 kids that have autism, Asperger's. So she is overwhelmed all of the time. Now, if you want to really change your game, is that what you want to change, right? It's called awareness. A-W-A-R-E-N-E-S-S. Awareness is also synonymous with the word consciousness. So money, you talked about money. So your money consciousness, your money awareness, the way you communicate with yourself about money, the way you communicate with yourself about free enterprise. That doesn't mean that you let money rule you or control you, but it means you become much more skilled at how to create results in free enterprise rather than trading time for dollars as an engineer, right? As an engineer, where did you go to college?
Actually, I never went to college.
Self-taught?
Self-taught.
Self-taught? So as an engineer, what do you top out in your profession?
I'm at 6 figures.
6 figures. That's pretty good. So that means you're one of the top 7% of society. So why do you want to own a business?
Future.
What does that mean, future? That's a word. It's not an answer.
So I don't have to work for someone.
So what would that feel like? See the questions I'm asking him? Felt questions. What would freedom look like?
Good life.
All right, what would the good life look like?
Close to what I'm doing.
All right, so here's where I assist most. So funny? Clearly defined short-term goals. Most of society does not have these. They do not have clearly defined short-term goals. What most of society has, Daryl, are wishes. And their language style reinforces this by saying this: I'd like to. I'd like to. What's something that's important to you that you do on your bucket list before you leave this earth plane? Anyone? What's some place you want to travel to? Where? It's good. Okay, keep going. All right, keep going. All right, so when will this be? Someday? Someday never comes. Right now, as of today, I'm 2 weeks away from getting back a 1973 TR6 that I purchased last August. And when I purchased it, it went into a frame-off restoration process. So first place it went to the mechanic. Because you send it to the mechanic first, you don't have it painted first because the mechanic screws up the paint. So it went to the mechanic first. It was at the mechanics for 3 months. Then to frame off a car and to paint it properly and to paint it to my specifications, it's about a 4-month process. So you have to be able to do this. If you have a goal, you have to be able to have this. See the outcome before you start. You have to be able to manifest. You have to be able to see the manifestation of your outcome before you start. But this is why most people don't do this, because they wait till it's perfect. They wait till it's perfect. You have to be able to see the outcome. You ask the average American why they own a business, and they'll say freedom. And here's what they don't understand. Owning a business does not give you freedom. It gives you the opportunity not to have a job. You will put more effort into owning a business, right, Darren, than you ever did on a job, and it's your time. Now, you can have a better experience doing it, But if you resent your business or procrastinate in your business, you'll just stay disappointed. And you can only do this for a very short period of time, right, Daryl? You can only live on credit so long. It's true, you can only live on credit so long, credit or borrowed funds. It's not fun living with your mommy either, is it, Daryl? I lived with my mommy once upon a time. I made $250,000 when I was 26 years old, had my first Mercedes when I was 26 years old, and like you, Daryl, at 30 I was homeless. Not only was I homeless, I was suicidal, consuming a gallon of vodka a day. Not Stolichnaya, I graduated down to Popov. And I would spend most of my morning trying to remember where I bought vodka yesterday. After I went through the dry heaves with alcohol poisoning, because I was trying to control where I bought yesterday because I didn't want them to see the same guy to see me twice. I would spend a lot of time in my head figuring out where I was going to do this, how I was going to drink. I'd get so exhausted I'd just do it. That's control. So Daryl, I know what it's like to do this. Very overrated place to be as an entrepreneur is a place called rock bottom, right? So when you write your first book, you don't require chapter 8 to say rock bottom. It's a very overrated chapter. It's a nice comeback story, but you don't have to have that chapter, right? So clearly defined short-term goals. Is that important? Is that important? And then what about this? A 90-day game plan. Is that important? So on January 1st, you should be operating on a very set, clearly defined schedule between January 1st and April 1st. That means you've become a disciple of this schedule. That means you have emotional and physical discipline. That means that you start to develop a routine for your enterprise. As the CEO, founder, and stockholder of your business, you also better be its best employee. Because if you're not, then you will just continue to do this. Get ready, stay disappointed. If you're ready to change, these are the components that you require. Clearly defined short-term goals. 2014. If you desire to have a 7-figure year, right, Darren? 7-figure year, there's a recipe to it, right? It breaks down to this, an average of $3,000 a day. That's $21,000 a week, $84,000 a month. That would be your first $1 million year. But before that ever happens, here's what you learn to do. Have millionaire habits. See, being talented is great, but the graveyards of the world are filled with people that have talent, who tiptoed quietly through life, arrived there safely, and lived the greatest pain, the pain of regret. And number 3, with this daily game plan, you have to have this, a daily method of operation. If you don't have these 3, then what you have is a wish while you wing it. Now, how many of you are going to be a recovering winger after tonight? Why? If you don't know, why don't you want to be disappointed anymore? It's exhausting, isn't it? So you'd have to do this. You'd have to change a core belief, specifically about self. That's what you'd have to change. Belief means sense of certainty. You have to change the sense of certainty about yourself. So what you do is you go up and down, don't you? I can't, I should, I shouldn't, right that? Then you should all over yourself. Do you do that? Spend a lot of time shoulding all over yourself? Are you exhausted with that? What's your business? Come up here in the $1 million seat. Right there's a $1 million seat. Is it funny? What's your first name? Elizabeth. Why do you want to be a real estate investor and a $1 million investor? What does that mean?
I would like to go sit on a beach in Bora Bora while my bank account grows.
Well, you better sit on your ass at a desk first. You know what that is? And I have an acronym I use. It's called AIC. You know what that means? Ass in chair. There's 10 feet in your office. There's a desk. There's a desk pad. And you better be really comfortable right here on that desk pad. Because a lot of your transactions are going to happen right here. There should be a window right here where you can see out into beautiful California. There should be a computer right here, possibly a laptop right here. You can have your cell phone right here. You should have a landline with a headset right there. And this better be organized. Because if it's not organized, it's going to be unorganized like you live, right? And overwhelmed. You ready to change that? I'm a recovering addict. I spent my whole day overwhelmed. Is that what you do? Pretty much? So why do you want to change?
I'm tired of it.
Are you? Are you serious about it? Are you? Good. Well, anyone can change, right? But why would you do this? You know what you do? You do this a lot. It's not funny. I watched you do it. That's a tendency. You did that as a kid, right? You got attention because your mom then would get pissed off at you for pouting, right? God, I'm good, aren't I? So you do that as a reflex. Here's what you do. It's not funny because here's what you do when you do that. You shut down. I used to do it too. My father used to get that rooster off your lip or I'll knock it off. Is that uh-huh? Am I touching a nerve here? So how many of you can relate to where she is? Look around. Raise your hand. How many can relate? So here's what you have to, you have to have this. You have to have a why. What does that mean? Right, a reason. A reason bigger than what? Right, reason bigger than problem. Shauna, you just recently re-engaged as a businesswoman, didn't you?
I absolutely did.
And why did you re-engage as a mompreneur to be a businesswoman?
Because I heard you.
Good, that's a good reason.
I heard you.
See, she's laughing too.
You're in my back pocket. You've been in my back pocket for the last 30 days.
Thanks for that
My
vision.
life- You're welcome. My life has changed 1,000%.
All right, but I'm still waiting for the answer to my question.
Why did I?
She wasn't listening, right? Why do you want to be a businesswoman?
Because I want my husband and my children to all be together and just live life with our money making, make money for us.
So what would that look like?
Us living on a beach house.
Actually, see, here's what you guys do. You guys spend too much time out in the romance. You got to start to romance what you're going to do daily.
Oh, daily. Oh,
Yes, that. Here's what job people do. Job people constantly talk about freedom. Entrepreneurs talk about daily action because it's daily action that gets them to freedom. People that have jobs talk about freedom. Business owners know that they have to do this. PTP, pay the price. Right, Daryl? Now, you can own a business, and what you want to be able to do is be able to take 2 weeks or a month soon, right? Theoretically and possibly 3 months, right? Maybe 6 months. And then if you're really, really good at this game called free enterprise, you will be able to have multiple streams of income. Is that right? Where you will have money flowing to you. That is called prosperity consciousness. But before that ever even freaking happens, paying the price comes down to what I do daily. Now, you own an insurance brokerage, right? How many people do you have in your circle of influence that produce for you? So you're one and done? So is that uh-huh?
Yes.
So you put in the 8, 10, 12, 14-hour days? That's what a business owner does, isn't it? A business owner is willing to pay the price. So for all you that romance the 7 figures, here's what you also better romance. You better have 7-figure skills because the more money you create, the more skilled you have to be to keep it together. Would you agree? I mean, you've got to have the skills required to do this. This comes, and it's not that difficult, but it comes not just from practice in the mirror. It comes from repetition and experience. It's called game on experience. That's ITF, in the field. AIC, ass in chair. That's where that comes from. It comes from doing the same thing over and over until it's this, a discipline. Not only is it a discipline, but it becomes a reflex. Now, if your profession requires sales skills, then you will encounter the same objections over and over. And once you learn how to neutralize an objection by asking a question, then your LOA begins to go up, your law of average. So your law of average. Now, if I was your coach, I would teach you how to ask a series of questions that are very routine over and over. So if any of you hire me to be your coach, you're going to hear this from me over and over. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Do I make my bed when I leave a hotel? Every time. Because I make my bed every morning when I get up. When I leave a hotel room, and I live in a hotel room 3 days a week, my hotel room looks like my room in my house. Because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. If you do one thing half-assed and then try and do the rest of your life, game on, it doesn't work like that. Because your neurological network won't separate that. You have to learn to do this. Develop habits. But if you rebel against your own success, then you'll continue to be and stay disappointed. That means you must develop a different kind of discipline that got you being average. Make sense? What do you hear me say to you? No, I didn't say you need to be disciplined. Need would never come out of my mouth. I'm suggesting to you, right, and you do this one day at a time. But if your brain says, I'm not sure if I can do that tomorrow, then you're done before you start. So the discipline that you require comes from your words. The words that you speak determine your actions. Your word becomes and stays your law. Would you agree, Coach? Because if you continue to say the same things that you learned in childhood, if you mimic the same behaviors that you learned from your parents and your family, and you have anxiety about outperforming or outproducing your family because of guilt, you'll do the same thing over and over and stay stuck. Does anyone have a quick question for me? A question, not a story. How you doing, Sonia?
I wrote it down, but I can ask.
Okay, who has a quick question for me? My name. My name is Jeff. So if you're going to ask me a question, use my first name. And do this, use a comma after my name. Because when you use my name with a comma, it anchors the question. You got it? What's your name? Jeff Leland. Now you notice, okay. Leland. Notice that I ask everyone their name. I also ask them where they're from. You know why? Rapport, exactly. I'm very geographically intelligent. I know a lot of the colleges in America. I know the area codes in America. It gives me an opportunity to ask a lot of questions. Leland, what would you like to ask me?
My question is, how is guilt associated with codependency when you're talking about the levels of energy, the vibration?
Well, if you have become codependent, and that is your identity, do you have the book Codependent No More? Do you have the book Codependent No More? Melody Beatty wrote that book and sold over 50 million copies of that book. Every one of you in this room should have this book and start with chapter 4 because it breaks down the qualities of a codependent. So to answer your question about codependency and guilt, typically when you become codependent, you will tend to enable people. By enabling them, it means that you will tend to do too much for them. And as you do too much for them, they typically do not reciprocate. So it leaves you disappointed. So the guilt factor, it comes in two forms. It comes in guilt and resentment. So if you have codependent tendencies, you will tend to do things out of obligation and guilt. It means you will say yes to things you really should have said no to because you're too guilty to say no. Then you'll overcommit yourself. Then you'll resent yourself for what you committed yourself to. Make sense? Is that uh-huh or yes? Now you understand that? So when will you be buying Codependent No More? When will you be buying Codependent No More?
Tomorrow.
Good. Did you answer that for him? Oh, good. But I didn't ask you. So that would be codependence. It's cool. Got it? What's your name? Michelle, how are you doing tonight? Where are you from, Michelle? Long Beach, California. You have a question for me, Michelle?
If you realize that you have all this baggage,
You don't have that much, do you? No, I won't own that. Okay, good. See, that would be guilt. Go ahead. Over here, Michelle.
how long does it take to you can recognize it? Does it immediately begin to clear up?
No, it doesn't. You can recognize it all day long, but until you actually have action in your changes, Being aware is one thing. Being aware is a component of transformation. You can be aware of it, because if you're aware, you're no longer in denial. But the number one situation that the average American does is they do this. They procrastinate. How many of you tend to procrastinate? You put things off till the last minute. And what happens with procrastination is you avoid pain until it becomes painful. It's the ultimate contradiction. I break it down in this book. I wrote this book 4 years ago, From Procrastination to Production. I shopped this to an agent, and in 1 week, Career Press picked this up. It's now in 4 different languages in every Barnes & Noble in America because no one writes on this topic. I took procrastination and broke it down into 6 personality types, just like personality types in human beings. Well, there are different procrastination types, but most of society procrastinates on their health. That's the number one situation. Are we as a society obese? Generally speaking, we are, right? And what kind of food do we now consume, mostly? GMOs, don't we? Isn't that what most of society? How many of you could never eat at McDonald's again? Or fast food? How many of you now begin to look at the labels of what's on the food you eat? How many of you now eat much more organically, right? Okay, well that means you're in a minority. Do you realize that? How does the rest of society eat? With blinders on, right? And then they consume how many calories a day of trans fat and GMO? A lot, right? So most of society is unhealthy, and then in their money consciousness, how does most of society do? How does most of society do? Right. So these are the 2 most areas, and then are most of society satisfied with their vocation? Right? So these are the 3 reasons that you present business opportunities to people. Because they are unhealthy, because they have money challenges. If you're a real estate investor, you're looking for a real estate team or people to partner with, most of society has money challenges. If you have an opportunity for them, it can resolve some of their problems, right? If you're a health coach, right, then you have a niche, right? Most of society has challenges with three situations: their health, their money, and their vocation. Most of society are unsatisfied with their vocation. Why is that? Why is that, Leland? Well, they don't get compensated for what they're worth. They get compensated what a job is worth, correct? And that most people trade time for dollars, right? About 80% of the population is gainfully employed that it has a job. Only 47% of the population pays taxes. What does that tell you? How what, Leland? What's that tell you? Pardon? Right. Most of society is underpaid. So to live a good life in a major metropolitan city, $20,000 a month, $240,000 a year begins to become a much better life, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Now, if you have this twice, if you have 2 businesses that net that, or you're achieving $40,000 a month or $480,000 a year, how are you doing? If you're in a 41% tax bracket, or you have a good accountant or a good financial planner, and you start to lower that down through what some of the people who are vendors here, you start to drop that down, you should have this, profit, P-R-O-F-I-T. What does that mean? Profit. Well, that becomes a different kind of leverage, doesn't it? How many of you want to have this? A-S-S-E-T-S. Okay, your assets are what determine what your net worth. But for you to ever have assets and net worth, you have to have this, self-worth. And that means S-E, self-esteem. And that means how I feel about self. But if I am uncertain, then I'm going to live in doubt, and then I'm going to procrastinate. How many did I just define right there? Raise your hands if that's you. How many is that you? So I ask you, my fellow Americans, what am I, that's you. See, that's you in present tense. What am I prepared to do about that now? So you can meet the right person. The right person can show up and deliver that one word, that one content, that one speech, that one situation that can change your whole life. For me, it was Jim Rohn. I saw the great Jim Rohn speak in 1990 at an Herbalife convention, And that was the beginning of my transformation. I started listening to Think and Grow Rich on cassette. I then read a book that changed my life called Awaken the Giant Within, specifically chapter number 4 on belief. The great Tony Robbins, the San Diego native, wrote Awaken the Giant Within. I read that book in 1990, and he broke down the power of belief and belief systems. That began to change my life. So see, in one situation, one person can show up for you. Then also, if you're in any kind of leverage business, if you can attract that rock star, superstar person into your reality that you can get compensated from, that can change your whole game. Do you realize that? That one client, that one producer, that one teammate, that one person that you can attract to your reality. That woman that I showed you that made $900,000 in a calendar year in a network marketing company, how'd you like to have her in your circle of influence? But to be able to attract these kind of people, you have to feel worthy. You have to feel you deserve it, that you have the ability to receive it. But if your self-talk says, I'm not sure if I could, I don't know if I'm able to, then you've talked yourself out of the situation before you ever start. The number one situation that hinders most people that start a business is the anxiety of the responsibility of success. You have not been conditioned to be successful, you've been conditioned to have a job, right? And if you've been conditioned to have a job, you've had this, told what to do. I have coached over 9,000 clients in 17 plus years. That's 90,000 hours of one-on-one coaching. About 80% of the clients I coach do nothing. Some of them even hire me and don't even show up for their coaching. Have you ever had this happen? I have. I've had numerous people do it. Hire me, and they're so anxious about coaching with me, they have a story about what it's going to be if they just waive their funds. A small percent of people hire me, Leland, and never answer my phone calls. Because they have so much anxiety about I'm going to get in their face or whatever they say I'm going to do. They have this story about what's going to happen. Well, fucking A, dude, that's what I'm good at. I'm good at that. I'm good at it. I can confront people diplomatically like her. I noticed something that she did in a neurological situation that very few people in the world would pick up on it. And so I can show, and I can break that event down. Now, when I can break that event down, I can assist her neurologically to understand this cause and effect. Because that becomes autonomic. See, when you can learn to read people, and you do this by being attentive. You don't buy attention, you don't pay attention, you have to be attentive. And the only way you can do that is by doing this, having an inner body moment. Now, if you have been, 3 out of 5 women have been molested. 2 out of 5 men have been molested. Then you factor how many people come from a dysfunctional home. Here's a little bit about my history. My parents are beautiful people. My parents look like look like JFK and Jackie in the 60s. They were beautiful people. My mother had the mink on the sleeves. My father had game. He was really good looking. But the only problem was I was an accident. I was a knocked up have-to case, and my father resented me for ever being born. My father is a Hall of Fame basketball coach, 357 victories in one state, 43 in the state of Missouri for a total of 400. My father doesn't even speak to me. He's never seen me speak, never talks to me, never calls me on my birthday, never sent me a birthday card, and never said those 3 words, I love you. The 4th one, son. Now, my brother was born on purpose 5 years later. Now, my parents are these 2 beautiful people. They went on to become millionaires. They look good, but they had 2 sons that became alcoholics. They had no fucking clue why. You dig what I'm saying? They had no clue. They think we had a drinking problem. They don't understand that they abandoned us emotionally. They don't understand that their hobbies were much more important than their children. They don't really understand that. It's not my responsibility to spell it out for them. I forgave my father a long time ago and keep forgiving him for whatever he did. Because within all that, I still got a lot of great juice and just DNA from him. My parents have many good qualities, but the fact that they abandoned me emotionally, I can't hold them responsible for the rest of my life, because then I'm the victim if I do that. We have to learn to let it go. If we don't let go of the people that violate us and hurt us and keep doing the same thing over and over, then neurologically it becomes our identity. So the reason I can confront people, because I care enough to confront you, because I can break down the events that create the feelings, that become the mood, that become the identity. I'm not for everyone. I'll be the first to tell you, but I have an 8-week waiting list. The people pay me full price up front before I even start coaching them. It's not negotiable the 8 weeks, because I just can't. I don't have the room. And I've been coaching for 17 years, and I'm really good at understanding this cause and effect. Once you start to understand the cause that creates the effect, now you have the awareness of where to change. But if you keep doing the same thing over and over, you'll continue to get the same thing over and over. Right, Daryl? It's very humbling to live with your parents, isn't it? Parents-in-law. I lived with my parents when I was 30 years old so I could keep the dysfunction going. This is classic. I spent 6 months in LA County Jail for hitting it. I had a quarter pound of cocaine, hit 3 parked cars with the blood alcohol of 3.3. That's a very bad trifecta. Up on Wilshire Boulevard, about 25th, there's a Ralph's parking lot. LAPD had me right there. They towed off my car. I lost every possession I had. I moved back to small town Iowa so I could live with my mommy and daddy. Now imagine the discomfort and embarrassment that I caused my parents, because bad love's better than no love. So the first week I'm out of jail, living with my parents, what do I get? Public intoxication. My father's out in the front yard in his underwear, doing what he did with me, all yelling at me. I knew this would happen to you. I was proving him right. Once I started to understand that, I got clean and sober about 6 months after that. I never had another drink. That was 26 years ago in 4 months. Because I just said, man, I can't do this anymore. I am so done with this. The pain was great enough. Now, that's the worst way to change. That model is called rock bottom. You don't have to hit rock bottom to change. You can change at any given time, like right now. If you're ready to do that, then you're in the right place at the right time. 2014 is a great year to be a real estate investor, isn't it? It's a great year to be an entrepreneur, isn't it? Country's ready for it, isn't it? We, the people, isn't that us? We, the entrepreneurs, we carry the freight, don't we? Don't we? Don't we carry the freight? And if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to have some of this. You got to have some pride. You got to have some dignity. You got to have some juice. You got to have some DNA. You got to be able to bring it. You got to be able to say, bring it on. You know, you're going to get criticized for being an entrepreneur. People are going to say, oh, grow up, get real, stop chasing rainbows. You got to be able to let people be right so you can be rich. You got to learn not to argue with people because they want you to defend yourself. Is that right, Darren? You got to learn to let people go very quickly. What are you receiving from me tonight, anyone? What are you receiving from me tonight? Pardon? Good, right on. Anyone else? Right, insight, anyone else? Cause and effect. To affirm, right? 108 receptions in my high school passing career. That was good. You ain't seen nothing yet. I was told I was too small to play college basketball. Not. By my father. He was my coach. He suggested I play college baseball. He was right, too. I proved him wrong and blew my baseball career. One of my best friends in high school and college was a guy named Gary Gaetti. Played 19 years in the major leagues, made about $40 million. Another one of my friends, Bill Whitaker, played 4 years in the NFL. He was also told he was too small at 5'9", 175 pounds. Played 4 years. To affirm. In 2003, I came up with my own deck of affirmation cards called More Heart Than Talent cards. A 52-card deck written in present tense. They retail for one Andrew Jackson. You know what that is? A $20 bill. So a very easy transaction, an Andrew Jackson. So for $20, I also receive all credit cards. So for $20, you may leave tonight with one of my affirmation cards decks that are written in present tense that will assist you to change your emotional dialogue specifically about yourself and money. I have written 4 books. I have written 3 books and co-authored 1 book. I co-authored and wrote 3 chapters with Mr. Phil Lott, the great author of Money is My Friend. Money is My Friend has been written in 14 different languages, sold over 500,000 copies without ever receiving a national publishing contract. Phil Lott passed from this earth plane a couple years ago. I was fortunate enough to be mentored by him. When it comes to the laws that govern money, I bought the rights to this book in 2000. It's one of my best sellers. My first book that I ever wrote by myself, was a book called Money is My Friend, or I'm sorry, is More Heart Than Talent, a handbook on free enterprise. And for those of you who are psychologically unemployable, how many years would that be you? That would be you? This book is dedicated to you. I wrote this book in 2005. My most recent book that I have 2 versions of, and you may buy this individually or it comes in a book set. You may buy all 4 of my books for 2 Andrew Jacksons. That would be what? That would be 8 fives. That would be 8 Abes, right? And 4 Hamiltons. Is that right? Or I do take all credit cards. You may buy this book individually for $20. You may purchase all 4 of these for $40. They do retail for $80. You may purchase them tonight for $40. My signature CD set comes in 10 CDs. In 1 unit is Confessions of a Recovering Procrastinator and Psychology of Asking. I retail these retail for about $400 for the 2 of them. You may buy them tonight for $99. Now my signature product that I do well, right Darren? I have been coaching for 17 years. I've coached 9,000 clients, 90,000 hours of one-on-one coaching. I consistently have an 8-week waiting list for my coaching services. So if you hire me tonight, you would receive these 4 books. You would receive a total of 6 of my CD sets, one of which is Principles for Prosperity, 1 8 CD set on mindset, 1 8 CD set on prospecting, 1 10 CD set on closing, 1 10 CD set on asking, and the Confessions of a Recovering Procrastinator. You'll receive these 6 CDs, these 4 books, and 5 one-hour sessions. So my sessions are about 55 minutes, 1 hour every 2 weeks. My coaching is most effective 1 hour every 2 weeks. I like to space the 5 hours over a 10-week period. I find that's most effective for me and you. And I also add an additional value. I host a 2.5-day event called Breakthroughs to Success. In June will be my 15th anniversary of hosting this event. I've hosted 103 of them. It's a very intimate event for 30 to 40 people that I host in Stockton, California 4 times a year. It's a $1,000 event. I add it to the coaching for free. So if you want to attend my Breakthroughs to Success, it comes with coaching, 5 one-hour sessions, 6 CDs, 4 books, $2,500. And I do take payments, 1 now. That is my payment plan. You got it, right? Do you have a payment plan? Yeah, 1 now. I want to thank Daryl and Imran for having me here this evening. I will be here this Saturday from 9 until 3. It'll be a very small, intimate audience right here in this hotel. I want to thank you for having me here tonight. Daryl and Imran, from the center of my heart, thank you very much for allowing me to share with you tonight.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. All right, doesn't sound, oh, here we got sound. Thank you, Jeffrey. You know, not often do we give our speakers gifts, but I will tell you, and this is so right on the money, so good job. Jeffrey Combs, this is from the San Diego Investment Club, most influential speaker of 2014.
All right.
That is you.